ago now. It was a Friday night and I was fast asleep. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning and I hear the door code start being entered. It's this beeping noise. So I roll over and I say to my husband, Chris, I think someone's trying to break into the house. He runs down the hallway, looks over the stairs at the front door, and he calls out, there's no one there. At that point, we hear the front door go keypad deactivated, which means that the code has been entered incorrectly too many times. So he comes back to the bedroom and we look on the app that tracks everything that's happened on the front door. And you can clearly see that someone has entered the code incorrectly 3 times, which shuts it down. So I say, okay, quickly, let's have a look at the security cameras. And we have one of those like Ring doorbells. We get it open. No one has been in our front yard. The sensor lights didn't come on. There was no one there, but someone has definitely tried to enter our keypad incorrectly 3 times and has shut the front door down. Anyway, we try not to think about it too much, get on with our day the next day. You know, these things happen. Then the next night, Saturday night, around the same time, I'm talking about 1 o'clock in the morning, I am fast asleep and I hear my husband's phone ringing on speaker. And I roll over and I say, Chris, who on earth are you calling? It's 1 o'clock in the morning. And he gets up his phone. He goes, Annie, I'm not calling anyone. Like, the screen's dead. It was black. He couldn't do anything to it, but it was calling someone on speaker. And it rings and it rings and it eventually gets this person's voicemail. And it's, you know, the standard, can't come to the phone right now, leave a message, I'll get back to you. But I'd never heard this person's name before. So I said to my husband, Chris, like, who was that? Like, I've never heard, who is it? And he goes, that's my old boss who died 2 years ago.
When I was 14, I got a summer babysitting job for a boy who was only about 3 years younger than me, but he was kind of feral, so his parents weren't comfortable letting him stay home by himself. It was a really easy babysitting job. Really, the worst part of it was just that the boy wanted to be a rapper when he grew up, and he was always making me listen to him rap Eminem songs. So I'd been there for about 3 weeks, and one day, out of nowhere, the bathroom mirror fell off the wall, so I cleaned up all the broken glass, and I told the dad about it when he got home, and, you know, that was that. Sometimes these things just happen. But the next day, I got there, and there's already a replacement mirror on the wall, and the mom says, hey, Kate, I heard you met our ghost. And I'm like, what? And she goes on to tell me that the reason there's already a replacement is because they buy them in bulk at Lowe's, because this happens like 3 to 4 times a year. They have a ghost. They're not scared of it. It just is what it is. So I'm super skeptical. I'm like, these fools are just really bad at hanging mirrors. But over time, I realized that weird things really do happen in this house. Like, sometimes I would go in the kitchen and I'd leave and come back in just a second and the cabinets would all be open, or they had a DVD rack in the living room and sometimes just like one single DVD would come flying out of it. So I worked for them for 3 summers, and it's now the end of August. I'm 16 now. He's 13. This is our last summer together because he's going to stay home by himself the following year. So it's just really our last couple days together. So I'm in the living room. He's in his bedroom playing Nintendo 64 when suddenly I hear the sound of someone coming up the basement stairs, and I freak out because like the dad never came in the back door. He always came in the front door. So I knew it wasn't him. So I paused for a second to make sure like that was really what I'm hearing, but no, like there's definitely someone on the basement stairs. So I hear the sound of the kitchen door opening into the basement, the kitchen door to the basement opening, and I hear a man cough. So like there's definitely somebody in the house. So I run down the hall and I grab the boy out of his room and I like drag him down the hallway, and I have like him in one hand and my Nokia brick phone in the other. And as I'm passing the kitchen on my way out of the corner of my eye, I see that there's definitely someone in the kitchen. He is like a big man with a ponytail and a beard. So I get all the way out of the house to the sidewalk and I'm about to call the police, but I pause for a second to tell the boy what's going on. I'm like, hey, like somebody broke into the house, I'm calling the police. So I'm about to call 911 and the boy snatches my phone out of my hand and he starts laughing and he's like, that's not, no one broke in, Kate, like that's just my brother Ronnie. And I'm like, what? So he runs back into the house. I follow him. He goes into the kitchen and greets this man and he's like, Ronnie, Kate thought you were a murderer. And the man just like smirks with a bowl of cereal in his hand and returns to the basement. I had worked for this family for 3 years and I never once heard a single person ever mention this child had a brother, let alone a much older brother. But the worst part is I come to find out that he has lived in the basement for years, and apparently he was in the basement every single day for the entire 3 years that I babysat for this family. I was a 14, 15, 16-year-old girl, and there was a grown man in the basement, and I had no idea. So which is worse, the ghost?
The story I want to tell is when I was like 8. It was 2002. I was in my mom's friend's wedding as a flower girl, and this wedding was in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And we were staying at like a very prominent old hotel. So it was like my parents, myself, my two younger siblings, and my grandparents. We were all going to this wedding. And on the day of check-in, I went in with my mom and we were in the lobby. And this little girl with red hair came up to me and asked me if I wanted to play. And I felt really, really uneasy and like trepidatious about this girl, which like I never got with other kids, as a kid. So I kind of remember just like brushing her off a little bit because I just got like a weird feeling from her and was like, oh, like I can't play, like, sorry, like blah, blah, blah. And she was like, okay, and like went away. Then, like, probably like a day or two later, I was in the hotel room with my younger siblings and my grandparents, and there was a knock at the door. And so I went and opened it. I don't know why. But she was there. And actually, it's kind of dawning on me why it was probably me who opened the door, but we'll get to that later. But so I went and opened the door, and this little girl with the red hair was there. And then she was also there with like a 13-year-old boy and like another preteen. And I was like, hey, and she was like, hey, like, do you want to come see where we live? And in my like 8-year-old brain, I was trying to make it make sense. I was like, oh, this is an old hotel. There's probably an orphanage here too. Like, that was my logic at the time. Just trying to make it make sense. So, I was like, sure. And we were on the 8th floor at the end of the hall, and there was a staircase, like right there. And so we start going up the staircase, and obviously, like, there's signs on the door, like, don't enter, staff only, blah, blah, blah. It's trespassing. And it was going up to like an attic, and I thought it was weird that they would like make kids live in the attic. But again, I was like trying to make it make sense as like a child and my understanding of the world. It was very narrow. But so as the door's like about to crack open, my grandma pops out of the hotel room and is like not happy and is like, Claire, like, you can't be up there. What are you doing? Come back here. Like, get down from there. So I turned to the kids. I'm like, hey, I'm sorry. I can't play. And they're like, okay. And so I go back. And then the day we're checking out, there's a lot of people in the lobby. It's the end of a wedding. Everyone's saying their goodbyes. And the little girl comes back up to me. She was like, hey, do you want to play? And so I turned to my mom. She's talking to somebody. And I was like, hey, Mom, like, can I go play with so-and-so or the little girl? I never knew her name. Or maybe I did, and I just don't remember. I don't know. But anyway, and she was just, like, really dismissive. Which, like, wasn't typical and, like, isn't typical. Like, she's always been somebody who, like, gives a definitive answer. So the fact that my mom was just like, whatever, blah, 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 like kind of just brushing me off didn't make sense. Even though she was like in a conversation with somebody, like still she would have like turned around and been like, no, you can't play. Or like, sure, go play. So that was odd to me. So I turned back around to the girl and I was like, I'm sorry, like I can't play. She was like, okay. And then that was it. And for a really long time, that is all I remembered. Well, I'd like talked about it with like my mom and my grandma, as like when I was older, like, oh, like, do you remember this little girl who kept asking me to play like at the wedding? And they don't remember a little girl. And like both of them have decent memories, and like you could chalk it up to like, why would they remember this little girl who kept asking you to play? Those are the kind of details that they remember. And no one remembers seeing this girl except for me. And something my mom also remembered about that trip was that my little sister would cry at nothing. And that wasn't really her MO. But she would just like get freaked out and start crying, and nothing would be there, and like nothing would really trigger it. And so my mom noted that. So I always kind of chalked it up to just like this, oh, funny little story, probably a little ghost, whatever. And then I got a little bit more curious. Like a couple years ago, I was like thinking about this story, and I was like, oh, I have the internet now. Like I can look up and see like this hotel, and if anyone else has a similar story. And so I looked up the hotel, don't remember the name, but like Al Capone stayed there, and like a bunch of presidents and like athletes. Like it's a very well-known hotel. It burned down, like the original one burned down, and they rebuilt it like again, still a long time ago, like the 1800s or like early 1900s. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. But so I got into like, oh, is it haunted? And like, yeah, people have seen this little girl before. And they've also seen like a woman in a white dress. And when I read that, like a very vivid memory came back that I had not thought about since the day it happened. But it was the day we were leaving again. All of us were in the minivan. I was in the far, far back. You know, I was in the way, way back. And we're sitting like in the parking lot getting ready to leave. And I look out my window, and like at the top of one of the pillars of this hotel was a woman in white, like levitating at 45 degrees off one of the pillars, like just midair. And she was seething. She was so angry, like probably the purest form of evil I've ever experienced. And I remember being really, really scared because I believed she was angry with me that she didn't get me. And I just had to like I just sat in the back and didn't say anything because I didn't want to be like, there's someone floating off of the hotel. And so I just sat in the back and was like, it's fine. She can't get you. We're leaving. We're out of here. You know, she's not going to get you. And like, as we drove away, I felt like so much better. You know, cause like, what you going to do? But I genuinely believe like her and the little girl are the same entity, and I don't know what would have happened to me if I would have gone up into that attic. Like if my grandma didn't come out of the hotel room and tell me to come back down.
Okay. So if you know me, you know that I grew up in a haunted house. I've got stories for days. The things that I experienced in that house are absolutely terrifying. Even the things that have happened to me since I've moved out of that house, we could definitely talk about those. But today I want to talk about one of my mom's stories from her childhood because it literally sounds like a horror movie. Like straight up nightmare fuel. Made me absolutely terrified of closets as a child. Um, so yeah, when I saw this trend going around, I thought I would share the story. My mom gave me permission. So yeah. So my mom has a sister, my aunt, we'll call her Mary for the story. Um, Mary would sleepwalk regularly, which, in my opinion, terrifying already. But one night, my mom was sleeping in her bed and she's woken up in the middle of the night. I don't think she realizes that it was like sleep paralysis in the moment, but she is awake and staring at my aunt, her sister, in the doorway of her room, just staring at her. And my mom tries to speak and get her attention, but she is like frozen and can't even get words out. So she just is like locked on her sister, and Mary slowly walks into the room and turns and walks to my mom's closet, walks into the closet, looks at my mom. Oh God, it gives me chills. She smiles, and how do I say this without getting flagged on here? She also, trigger warning, like herself, and like horrifying, absolutely horrifying. My mom is trying to scream like bloody murder, but can't get anything out. And she feels like it's going on forever. Like trying to scream and seeing your sister like that, like it's just, oh my God, like sounds so traumatic, especially as a child, to like see your sister like that. Yeah, so she is screaming, which she feels like is forever, and finally she's able to speak, and her parents, my grandparents, come running into the room, and they're like, what's wrong? And all my mom could say is, Mary's in the closet, Mary's in the closet, Mary's in the closet. And so her parents walk over to the closet, turn on the light, oh God, and it's empty. And they say, what are you talking about? Mary is in her bed asleep. Ugh, I hate it. I hate it so much. Like, come on. That's some like shit. Like, what the? Oh my God. Absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. So yeah, I joke with my mom that she's the one who brought the energy into our home, because she was the only one who understood all the stuff that was happening in our house growing up and that I was experiencing, which we could talk about another time. But yeah, crazy stuff.
When I tell this story to this day, people do not believe me. When I was a freshman in college, I was going to a private school in Pittsburgh. I was leaving the next year. I was going to a different school. So my friends and I, some of us were leaving, some of us were moving, whatever. We decided we wanted to kind of hit all the different spots in Pittsburgh that we really liked. So we went to like Mount Washington. For those of you who don't know, it's like a really nice lookout over Pittsburgh. And there was a place near our school, and it was called the Fountain of Youth. It was essentially just like a well that people in the town used to go to when it was in use. So we went there. It was nighttime. It wasn't like midnight. It was like 9 or so. It wasn't super late. We went there, and the way that this well was set up, it was like carved. There was a piece carved out of a rock formation, and then you'd walk in and then get water out of the well inside of it. So the people who were like shorter or smaller, they went inside, and like I'm tall, so I wasn't gonna like go in there, but other girls were going inside and just like checking it out and seeing what it looked like. And The rest of us were standing outside, taking pictures, just like messing around, waiting, hanging out, talking. The girls inside, one of them said, "Hey, I can kind of hear like rocks moving around in here. It sounds like there's something else in here." And we were all like, "Oh, okay, well, that's probably an animal, so just like come out." So as she's like leaving and coming out and saying like, "I can hear something in here," the girls who are outside, me specifically, my phone died. Turned off completely. It was at 70-80%. It was not anywhere close to dying. Turned off, died. Other girls' phones started dying. Then we heard a growl. And it did not sound like an animal. It sounded more like a human being trying to mimic what an animal sounds like when they growl. And we found this out later, that the girls inside the cave heard the same exact thing coming from inside the cave. We heard it outside in the woods. We all run and book it to the car. We get back. We're all like, we're done. That's it. Whatever. I'm going to take a shower. I'm changing, and I see in the mirror handprints on my shoulder. Like someone just grabbed it like that and left those prints. I tell everybody, check yourselves, because I just found this on myself. The one girl who was in the well lifts up her shirt. I look, she has 3 scratch marks down her back. I was like, nope, we're done. I started praying. I said, if there's something attached to us, get it away from us. I want no part of that. And that was it.